Welcome to a special edition of the Idaho Sheriff broadcast with Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff. Here we discuss all things liberty without compromise. I'm your co-host, Donna Wilson. Dan wants to give a response to Sheriff Bob Norris's comments made regarding budgeted license plate recognition software to be used by approximately 40 patrol vehicles at Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. These budgeted LPRs were discussed at the August 28, 2024 Kootenai County Board of County Commissioners fiscal year 2025 budget deliberations, and the proposal was met with lots of pushback and heated debate from concerned citizens of Kootenai County. So now here's Dan Wilson to discuss this further.
Hey folks, thanks for joining in on this special edition, a rebuttal if you will, a difference in philosophical views on the role of sheriff in protecting people's rights to life, liberty, and property. You know, the Fourth Amendment, those things that we hold to be extremely dear as Americans. Now, Donna talked about this just a second ago. This is more or less a response, not really a rebuttal, but perhaps a rebuttal to Sheriff Bob Norris, who was offended when constituents got up to speak at this fiscal year budget 2025 meeting, reconciliation meeting, or I guess it's an approval meeting. But the people are extremely upset because one of the line items, which over 5 years is at about $105,000, is for license plate recognition software. The Kootenai County Sheriff's Office currently has approximately 40 vehicles. Several of those, I believe 26 are patrol SUVs and the other 8 are pickup trucks, but they have these license plate cameras already equipped to these patrol vehicles. And I think if we show that one slide that I was indicating earlier, we're just going to kind of show what it looks like. They sit up on top of the vehicles, the patrol vehicles. And if we zoom in there, I think folks can probably see that. Not too exciting. They just look like a little box lenses that sits on the patrol vehicles. Now, part of the argument is why we should have these. Why should vehicles, approximately 40 of Kootenai County Sheriff's Office patrol vehicles, be equipped with these? And the argument's going to be for the greater good and the security of the citizens. We're going to get back into just a few minutes exactly what this technology is and the potential benefits weighed by the potential downfalls and the invasion of privacy. But I want to set things up. Many of you know that I spent 12 years as a reserve police officer over in Washington State. And during that time, I had my own patrol car that I was dispatched to calls with. And whenever I conducted a traffic stop, there's a certain protocol that takes place. But let me back up a little bit. Inside patrol vehicles, it is common. In fact, I don't know any agencies today that don't have this, but you have an MDC. Basically, that's your computer that you run inside on a mount inside your patrol vehicle. And that MDC, that computer, has a program for patrol that different agencies use different software, but it all works basically the same way. On these computers where we run software, we have access to databases for law enforcement investigation purposes. Now, there is the National Crime Information Center that is run by the FBI, where they aggregate all sorts of information regarding wants, warrants, stolen vehicles, registrations, all sorts of things that are important for law enforcement officers to know when they are dealing with a potential dangerous subject. But in Idaho, and it's the same in other states, we use what's called ILETs, and that's Idaho State Patrol, who manages this system and the accountability and the records. Well, they use not only the national crime database, but they also use local and state. So it's kind of a combination. And when I was on patrol and I wanted to run a vehicle, I'm driving around town and I see a vehicle that I would possibly be interested in stopping. Well, I could do one of two things per policy. One is I could get on my MDC while I'm driving that database, and I could query a license plate, no matter what state. And then once I hit return, I would get a hit on what that license plate was registered to. So that plate should come back to the vehicle that matches the description that it's actually registered to, and it'll come back with the owner and registered owner data typically. And it will go further. If it is tied through the registration to an owner, let's say Dan Wilson, well, Dan Wilson will also be queried. And that query will result in whether or not there's any warrants out, any protection orders, criminal history, etc. All those things that are important, again, when you're dealing with the public in the course of your investigation to know. So I can do it that way, and I know what I'm potentially stopping and all the information.
And that's a laptop that's mounted between the seats and the patrol car.
Yeah, in a mount.
Yeah.
Everybody's seen them. Cop cars drive around. You see them in all the cop cars.
We've watched cops.
Yeah. And then the other way is that you can also get on your radio in the car and you can run a plate through dispatch. And dispatch does the same thing. Sometimes we're too busy or we don't want to take our eyes off the road, or we're watching somebody that is potentially dangerous. And then dispatch can advise us all of the same information. Now, we're curious as law enforcement officers. Again, I'm retired for any of those that are questioning what I'm talking about. I'm talking as if I'm still doing it. But when I was working on patrol, I would need that information oftentimes to find out whether or not I was approaching somebody on a traffic stop that was potentially dangerous, had a criminal history of felony assaults or other heinous things, gang members, important information that law enforcement needs when we are contacting the public. It's not always accurate either, but it kind of gives us a little bit of an advantage. Action beats reaction. So I just kind of wanted to set this up because we're going to be talking about how these systems run. And hopefully by the time we're done, I will have articulated things well enough for you who really don't know how police work runs, how we do the job. You can get a better understanding of the technology that we're talking about, as well as how things operate, things that are necessary and things that are not so necessary. So with that little bit of an introduction, what I want to do is I want to go into this town hall where the sheriff is speaking before the Board of County Commissioners, giving a rebuttal to a lot of testimony from citizens where they oppose what they're calling to be the surveillance state. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to listen, and at times I'm going to stop. I'm going to make a comment, and then we're going to probably pull up some backup documentation, because my view is that we have too much of a surveillance state right now. And for what the Cooney County Sheriff's Office is asking for, not only is it potentially a danger to our privacy, and not disclosing information to third parties, but also I think that we don't need to spend the kind of money that they're requesting for this system. So let's go ahead and cue that video up. We're going to play it, and again, I will stop things when I think we need to.
Evening, on the phone or in person?
I think our sheriff would like to.
Chair Duncan, I'd like to make a comment.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have seen federal abuse, and as your sheriff, that federal abuse will not be here in Kootenai County. I think it's important that we take proactive steps in securing our privacy and fighting crime. This is a program that's been here in Kootenai County for 16 years. 16 years they have had license plate readers throughout this county.
All right, let's stop that right there. So Norris is correct. There have been these license plate recognition cameras throughout the county for, I believe, up to 16 years. A couple things that we should note. These are primarily stationary license plate readers. That means they're not on a moving patrol car. And a lot of times they're at the port of entry or when you're coming off of I-90 into the Coeur d'Alene area. And what they do is they are reading plates. And so just to clarify, it has been around a long time, but the technology has rapidly changed, like all of our cell phone technology has drastically changed in the past 16 years. So what they used to have versus what they now want are two completely different beasts. It's almost like a old Nokia flip phone compared to the brand new Apple iPhone. So go ahead.
Unlike the current request, the cameras that are current have 360-degree capability and run 24/7. We are asking primarily for officer safety purposes for that vehicle in front of that deputy to check that plate for a wanted person, wanted in a felony, stolen vehicle, etc.
Okay, let's stop that right here. Be very careful when you have law enforcement use the term for officer safety. Now, it is very important that officers maintain safety, and we do everything we can to limit their risk to very adverse, dangerous, deadly things. But not every time somebody utters the word officer safety is it truly for officer safety. Now, he just talks about in this that the plate that's right in front of the officer, that he needs to know that information. And what he's trying to say is, you know, when you have these cameras on top of the vehicle, you're going to be magically driving along and you get behind a car and all of a sudden, wow, right in front of you, the car directly in front of you comes back with a hit by this automated license plate reader. And it's going to warn you, there's a convicted felon, a murder one suspect right in the vehicle in front of you. And before I contact him, I got to know that information.
And are these, you may have already mentioned this, but are these always constantly scanning? I mean, you turn it on and it's just constantly scanning as the patrol car is.
When I worked for Spokane PD, we had two vehicles that were assigned. They were to certain officers that were full-time LPR cars, automatic license plate readers. They very rarely worked accurately. They were constantly getting near hits and misses, and so it wasn't that great. But these new cameras are pulling a tremendous amount of data per second, and they're scanning multiple plates. If you're on I-90, think about how many plates that can be scanned in a relatively short period of time. So what he's making it sound like is you're on patrol, you're driving along, and all of a sudden, boop, 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 you get an alarm that a murder one suspect's in front of you, and it just saved that officer's safety's life. Well, that's kind of Hollywood, because the reality of it is that many times when you are using your training and experience on patrol, you're running plates all the time for those that you believe might potentially be involved with criminal activity.
So
it's
really,
criminal profiling.
Yeah, I was going to say it's going
Criminal
through profiling before you're ever entering
not racial
that in.
profiling, none of that. It's criminal behavior profiling. And cops out there that are listening, they know exactly what I'm talking about. But when you're running plates, you may once in a while run into, hey, this plate comes back to a wanted person. Okay. And then you have time to formulate what you're going to do. You're not going to just immediately stop your car, get out and go talk to this person. Also, when there are recent events that take place where they're looking for, a robbery suspect that was fleeing in a car, or kidnapping suspect, or, murder suspect, whatever, the dispatch will typically put out information, a bolo, be on the lookout for this vehicle, this make, this color with this plate. And so again, very rarely do you just stumble upon something and then for officer safety, you must know that information. That's not entirely true. It's kind of romanticizing that process from my opinion. So I think it's important to understand from somebody that ran a patrol car and ran plates through not only my MDC, but through dispatch, and also was on the lookout for, hot vehicles. We already had that information, at hand. So anyway, go ahead and roll that.
This is an officer safety available to warn the deputy of a close proximity
Close
of a hazard.
proximity.
The ALPR system
Automatic
has
license
worked
plate
well
reader.
for us without any abuse here in Kootenai County. As we speak, we have a international crime network that is attacking Kootenai County that's been identified through this license plate recognition software. International crime circuit right here in Kootenai County.
All right, stop that. As a side note, I think that was kind of a wild card that was thrown out. You know, I'm going to, as a sheriff, plead my cause as to why we need this. And by the way, we have this international crime syndicate that's operating right here in Kootenai County. Now, there's been backlash over this. There's been several news outlets that have been going, what the heck are you talking about, Bob? And you broke that because somehow you got a hit off of a license plate reader. I mean, that's some real good detective work there. But I digress. Go ahead.
We have been able to effectively combat crime. Kootenai County is growing. We are getting more and more sophisticated people who are here that want to commit crimes.
Okay, so he's building it up.
You have no idea how crime is starting to percolate here in Kootenai County.
He's building this up
It's not
because
quality of life that we see quite yet. However, it's going in that direction.
okay, so he's basically saying
I'm seeking a
we're
tool
getting
set
all
that not
sorts
only
of
can
new
help us
criminals
fight crime,
here that are
but effectively
sophisticated,
with the
and
limited
he's building up why we need
resources
this.
we have, also put the safeguards in place to ensure the officer safety and your public privacy. Your
Officer
privacy.
safety.
Those safeguards shall be public record. We should have frequent audits where we discuss this information in front of the commissioners when we ask for these requests, and that we should be doing this every year to ensure compliance with the policy that I'm going to set forward with you today. All I'm asking for is the tool sets to get the bad guy. But I want to focus on making sure that these tool sets can't be abused. Frankly, there are some people that are running for sheriff that I would be very concerned about having access to these tool sets. Very concerned. They have no demonstrated history of ever properly handling these type of protocols and programs.
Okay, let's stop that
That's
right there. So in this, the sheriff, because he knows that my position is I'm not for this surveillance state, I believe it's unnecessary, he's going to get his dig in. And what does he say? He's very, very concerned that this LPR technology, I mean, doesn't make any sense. We should almost go back and re-listen to that. You know, he says that the license plate recognition in a sheriff candidate's hand, which that's me. He's very, very concerned. And what did he say? It's dangerous. It could be dangerous in my hand. Somebody that doesn't understand it. And this is where Bob Norris once again continually proves what a dunce he is.
Yeah, it's not that you're for or against the technology. It's that what would you do with the information in
That's
your
what
hands?
Now he's trying to wind it that somehow I'm going to abuse the information that I'm saying I don't want any part of.
Exactly.
And prior to this, my letter was read into the record by Chairman Duncan, where I said, we're not going to trade our dangerous liberty for a certain security. But he still, again, doesn't understand. Yes, Bob, I actually drove my own patrol car and got dispatched to all sorts of calls. I really did traffic stops on my own. I know firsthand what this technology is and what it does. But anyway, it's funny that he has to politicize something at not a campaign event, but at a public office event.
And that was noticed by people inside and outside of the room who were viewing online. You ready to keep
Let's
going?
Go.
I think that's very important. So these things need to be in place. That's why I'm going to do it. There is currently no statute in Idaho governing the retention of this data. So here's my recommendation
Okay, stop it real quick here.
for you. and
Okay,
for our organization.
so he's just talking about there's nothing protecting people in Idaho, and I referenced this in my open letter to the board yesterday when I was speaking in opposition. There was a bill that was introduced this year in February of 2024 before the Idaho State Legislature. It was House Bill 688, which was going to absolutely lock down the types of data that could be collected with these LPR systems when they had to be completely purged. There was some great safeguards. In fact, they gave, I think, 45 days as a general rule on data unless it was tied into an actual active case. So Bob is correct. There was nothing on the books that protects consumers, the citizens rather, protection on this data that's gathered. But all of a sudden, he's going to push for these policies. Let's see what his policies have to say.
Is one, provide guidance for capture, storage, and use of the digital data obtained through these use of automated license plate readers. Utilization of the technology to capture digital license plate and images while recognizing and following established public privacy rights. There is no registered owner information that we receive from that license plate. None. We do not receive the registered owner information on that reader, period.
Semantics.
Gathered data and images by the ALPR will only be for official use only because of potential confidential information that will not be open for public review and not subject to public records request. The technology will be used for law enforcement purposes such as identifying vehicles associated with criminal activity, terrorism activity, stolen or wanted vehicles, child molesters, human traffickers, stolen vehicles, stolen plates, and missing persons, which we use quite a bit on silver alerts on our elderly. The security of the information accessed and compliance will be managed by a communications lieutenant. The system will be restricted for only the collected, accessed, and used for law enforcement use only, period. We do not share data to commercial industries. We get to choose which agencies we share data with. We have firewalls in place to not allow access to any other entities.
Bloviating.
There is no commercial compilation of our plates into systems that are currently available by tow truck companies, that are currently available by other private entities that are driving around Kootenai County as we speak. No personnel shall access the system without completing department training. All responses should be verified by the operator and ensure the accuracy of the information. See, it doesn't even take down states. So we have to make sure that the vehicle that we're looking for is the correct vehicle.
In the right
Currently,
state.
right now, we have 65 hits a month. 65 hits a month on stolen vehicle, wanted people, vehicles wanted in generally a theft. And the amount that are coming from Washington.
Evil Washington again.
Spokane with a woke mayor now and a woke city council will only send more people, that criminal element
Sending them
here.
our way. Because by the
I
way,
am recommending that the dash cam data will only be retained for 24 months.
okay,
and
let's go
then
ahead and put that on
purged.
pause. So this is a large chunk. Now, number one, so let me get this straight. Woke Washington, and one of the reasons that I left Washington State is because they let the criminals run the show. Their policies are making them run to Idaho, which is a state of law and order. I've never understood this philosophy of Bob's, but let's go back and review what he just said. So he's talking about he's going to have these policies that are going to manage how this stuff is run. If you pull up the slide LPR Motorola, start at the top of the page, this is where I take extreme exception to Bob. Now, I put a records request back in about a month ago, August 1st. And in my request, I requested several things. And there's a response on page 2 by Lieutenant Headland. And I'm going to read through. So we're talking about, point number 2. I had specifically requested what kind of policies the current sheriff's office employs for these license plate readers. And here's one of the responses, line 2. We do not have any past or current LPR policies. Okay, so as of a month ago, they're telling me there are no policies. Deputies should refer to NCIC ILETs for license plate information obtained from an LPR. ILETs training is not an in-house record. That would have to be requested from ISP. Okay. So clearly, Bob, when he understood why I was digging through in my records request, because we know that every one of my records requests go directly to the top through Brett Nelson and through Sheriff Bob Norris. I think that he all of a sudden had to kick it in high gear and realize that, well, yeah, we should have standard policies. So ask Sheriff Norris why you didn't have a policy prior to this meeting. Why did you not have a policy less than 1 month ago before Dan Wilson brought the question up to you, Bob?
And this is what is the dollar figure on this line item in this
A cumulative over 5 years, it's roughly 5,000. I rounded it up. It's about 103 something.
Probably good to have some policies.
Yeah. So, and also for privacy, right? So again, these cameras, what they do is these cameras immediately feed this information through all these databases, and then they pull all that information back and feed it to patrol. But it's a little bit different than when I would run a plate myself, because there's a couple more steps that take place. Okay. So I just had something weird happen with my screen. Not certain what that is. Got it. Let's go ahead and listen a little more before Deputy Nick Franson gets up. And then we're going to start diving through Motorola's own documentation, their own writings, to tell people exactly what this software actually does. So.
Office and the law enforcement agencies that we want to share it with. And I will say that here, I will require any other entity, and especially a federal entity, to obtain a warrant before they have access to any of our data. If I could address, there was somebody that had a flyer
let's
up here.
put this on stop, because this is another
That flyer did not come from the sheriff's office.
So in conclusion on Norris's final statements about this, it's very clear that he does not have a policy. He is going to require, not we have been requiring. So Bob and the public in Kootenai County understand, from my perspective, I'm not concerned per se with people accessing data from Kootenai County databases. That's really not where I'm concerned, because I think we do have a very secure system throughout the state of protecting people's identification. But remember, these LPRs, when they capture images, they capture not only the plate, but they capture the vehicle and other pictures that go along with that. And then that is stored in a database. We're going to talk about this here in just a quick second. But the real problem is that, Bob, if you're going to implement a program like this, you know as well as I do, you claim that you're an admin guy for however many years managing a large department down the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office. You should know by now that patrol never does anything that it doesn't already have a written policy for. And that's not only to protect the employees, but it's also to protect the agency and the citizens. So let's go right now to Motorola Solutions, slide number 2, because we're going to start talking about the technology and what, in their own words, Motorola claims that they do. If we roll down all the way to page number 3. So this is a sponsored magazine article in Police One by Motorola Solutions. So this is a Motorola white paper, so to speak. I'm going to jump down and I'm going to just read a couple excerpts. There's no doubt license plate recognition systems have been a boon to the work of police and the safety of their communities. The development of different cameras for different situations and, pay attention here, powerful back-end software that helps departments most of their data extends the reach of law enforcement across cities and entire regions and backs it with solid evidence that furthers investigations and helps secure convictions. Does that sound like that data is just staying right here?
It does not.
Okay.
And we had a guy chime in today that says, you're out in public, you have an expectation that your privacy is not going to be kept. It happens every time you go out in public. So what's the big deal?
That is true. However, I think the majority of us also don't appreciate being followed everywhere we are with somebody with a camera in our face. And furthermore, if you're going to go with that argument, then why don't we just put up a Skynet where we have drones everywhere recording everything at every time so that, you don't have to worry if you're not doing anything wrong. But, if you find out later on, if we find out that you did do something wrong, we're going to go back and capture all that image. And then, we're going to hold you accountable, kind of like Minority Report. Let's go down to the next page. Just important excerpts from their own data. Let's see. We're going to go down to page number. Page number 9. Page number 9.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so here in their own words, when a vehicle is identified, Vigilant Vehicle Manager, which is the software that runs the Motorola license plate technology, so Vigilant, owned by Motorola. When a vehicle is identified, Vigilant Vehicle Manager provides its location history and can even predict where it might be in the future if officers need to contact the operator.
So basically it becomes a form of AI because it's collecting data and then giving the most likely output based on months or years of data.
Yeah. Here's another clip. Beyond individuals, Vigilant Vehicle Manager can also help power larger investigations. Its search functions allow geofencing with make, model, time, date, and other filters to find vehicles that frequent certain areas or are noted at multiple sites of interest. Same thing again, constantly gathering data and using it to kind of start predicting what your patterns are and where you may be or where you might have been. Let's go down to page number 10. Agencies can set their own policies for data retention, which Bob was alluding to, that he's all for making a policy. And the platform enables easy growth of the LPR system's reach through the inclusion of other law enforcement and private business partners.
Private business.
So not just law enforcement, but the inclusion of other law enforcement. Are we talking about federal law enforcement? Are we talking about state? Are we talking about local? And private business partners. Now, Command Central Aware allows you to aggregate intelligence from various sources and put it into a common platform, said Sean Prude, Director and Area Sales Manager for Motorola Solutions. It can integrate LPR data and incidents caught on camera by police and non-police cameras, consumer and business camera videos, in-car video, and body cam video to create a powerful integrated investigative tool. Goes on, Command Central Aware also allows video and security footage from businesses around the scene to be linked to the event that may provide the additional insight into plates, people, and activities. If an officer is directly involved, their body cam, dash cam, and of course, mobile LPR data is included as well, and users of MSI's Premier One computer-aided dispatch system can link back to troves of other information. This all points to an important truth about LPR systems. There's a huge value in the real-time information they provide the alerts to wanted vehicles, the power to identify subjects, but there's possibly even more in the data they can accumulate and store. In those mountains of bytes lie the answers to questions and crimes, and the right software makes them easier to ferret out.
So, I mean, the real rub in all of this is highly sophisticated, probably beyond. I'm guessing you've done more investigative research into the hardware and software from Motorola than some of the deputies that are arguing, saying we need this as a tool.
Obviously,
but this is recording your movements and has the potential to then predict your future movements. And what are we predicting future crimes based on those movements? I mean, that gets into pretty far down the road on that one.
What I am going to say is that, of course, it's like everything. You buy these extra models, and Kootenai County Sheriff's Office may right now not buy all those models.
Yeah.
But somebody like Bob Norris, who came from Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, who clearly doesn't really subscribe to people's privacy. He brags about handling sources like the CIA and the FBI. So he's no stranger. He claims that he had top secret clearances. Well, what happens when he gets in another term and he decides to show his real colors, and then he starts the totalitarian state that
except
that he could.
what he was attempting to do in his comments
when he was
there
projecting
was projecting what would a candidate do if this was in his hands.
Anybody that's listened to me for 10 months knows that I am all about liberty and limited government.
And it's like, dude, you're the one arguing for this. Norris,
Bob, I've never worked with the FBI. I've never worked with the CIA. I've never been trained by Mossad or Shin Bet. Now, I think this is another important part. It says all about the data that's collected, and this is page number 11 at the very bottom. Data that's collected only to sit doesn't do anyone any good. If you're investing in an LPR system, whatever its size or scope, you need to maximize what you collect and optimize what you do with it. That means casting a broad net. It means joining with partners for a wider reach. And it means supporting operations with back-end software that's fast and flexible.
So you're scrolling down there. Do you know what?
Let's go to page number
for?
14.
Okay.
Page number 14, success sells. The list of wrongdoers apprehended with the aid of the BlueNet system. And this is kind of a Skynet that we were talking about. So, I mean, all this stuff is expandable. Talks about the system is substantial. It's helped resolve murders, home invasions, burglaries, robberies, arsons, among others. That success has helped alleviate any public concerns about high-tech tracking. What they're trying to say is once the public understands the power of this software, they discard all of their concerns about privacy in the greater cause of what? Security.
Yep, safety and security.
Safety and security. What did Bob say earlier? This is about public safety and, he
was really touting officer safety. I don't know if he even got to the public safety part of it, but officer safety.
Page number 15. But the data is of even more value to others in law enforcement. That's been one of the really pleasant surprises for me, said McDermott. When we started this program, I pictured Hammond police officers being the ones that use this data solely. What he found was that the FBI uses this data. The state police constantly use this data. The county sheriff's department uses it. Local agencies, including the city of Chicago, use this data, and we share it with each other. Goes on, together the cases demonstrate how a robust LPR system can have benefits not only within a city, but far beyond its limits. It facilitates the joining of forces and resources and helps agencies work together more efficiently. It is, in fact, a powerful tool that can impact entire regions. Could this be enjoined with Coeur d'Alene? Can it be enjoined with Idaho Department of Transportation?
It sounds
Can
like
it be enjoined
federally.
with Spokane County, Spokane PD? So that's all I'm going to say on that. I mean, I'm reading from Motorola Solutions' own words on the various capabilities they are bragging about. It sounds extremely robust, and it sounds to me like Skynet.
Well, bragging about it and promoting it, that basically information sitting and doing nothing isn't going to do you any good. So the power that you have behind that information is to deploy it and actually use it for good.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we know that that never goes wrong. I'm going to pull up the last slide, number 3, and this is regarding the privacy policy of Motorola. And this is their own words. Starts out, page 1. This policy governs the license plate recognition system, LPR system, or system operated by the company and applies to our employees, customers, and camera affiliates who have access to the use of our system. Our LPR system is a searchable computerized database resulting from the operation of one or more mobile or fixed cameras combined with computer algorithms to read and convert images of registration plates and the characters they contain into computer readable data. Here's the money. The information contained in the system, LPR data, includes images of license plates, plus the date, time, and location where the images were collected, and the license plate characters and numbers associated with the image. These images stored in the system are collected from areas visible to the public where there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. So they're gathering all this information. They talk about it, what they do with it. Under their policy A, use and collection of LPR data. The company authorizes collection of LPR data for the use of the company and its customers consistent with this policy. The authorized uses of the LPR system are 1, by customers to identify or ascertain the location of a specific vehicle under circumstances when there is a legitimate commercial interest. Not government, not law enforcement, but a legitimate commercial interest. Number 2, by law enforcement agencies for law enforcement purposes. And here's the one that's concerning. Number 3, by the company, that's Motorola, to make LPR data available to customers and law enforcement agencies for the purposes above and to provide market research information to customers based on aggregated LPR data. The company does not make the LPR system or data it contains available to individuals for personal, non-commercial purposes. So what they're basically saying is anybody and everybody can gather that except for you or I that just wants the information.
Right. And commercial purposes, that I mean, what does that even mean?
Well, that can be
so
everything
broad.
from a private investigator. It can be insurance companies.
A bounty hunter?
Well, it can be
like,
it can be aggregated into those that study vehicles for commercial purposes.
Yeah.
You know, their marketing.
Yeah.
Sales, sharing, or transferring of LPR data under number D. The company licenses our commercially collected LPR data to customers for the authorized uses set forth in Section A of this policy. We just read that. The company shares the results of specific queries for use by its customers consistent with this policy and pursuant to the customer's license agreement. Through an affiliate subsidiary of our parent company, the company collects data for commercial purposes and does not collect data on behalf of law enforcement agencies. However, the company allows law enforcement agencies to query the system directly for law enforcement purposes consistent with this policy. E. And again, I'm only reading the highlights. There's much more that they're discussing here that people should find very concerning. Under E, the company is a custodian and the owner of the LPR system and is responsible for implementing this policy, except for law enforcement-owned LPR camera systems and the resulting data for which the respective law enforcement agency is the owner of the LPR data and the company is the custodian. Motorola Solutions CJIS security officer will be responsible for compliance to this policy. So they're saying, hey, there can be things said in law enforcement, but it's not 100%. It's not 100% conclusive. Retention. The company retains LPR data as long as it has commercial value. Not 45 days, not 2 weeks.
And what's Motorola's parent company? Because that was mentioned in this documentation as well.
Well, I think that they were
Something to
talking
look
about
into.
actually they're the parent company
Okay.
and it's the subsidiaries of
Got
them.
it.
Okay, so the company retains LPR data as long as it has commercial value. The company periodically evaluates the use of historical LPR data to determine if the cost to maintain the data exceeds its value. I mean, hey, can we sell enough of your data? Is it worth us storing all this for
Right.
who's going to buy it?
Yep.
With respect to data collected by a law enforcement agency, the data is retained according to the retention policy defined and managed by the agency which collected the data. So lots and lots of minutia in there to navigate through. Here's what we do know. We know that it's powerful software. We know that the software, when combined with other modules, can actually do some incredibly overreaching surveillance of people. And they're selling it for public safety and officer safety, and predicting future crimes, if you will, by predicting where certain vehicles that they are looking for may have been and might be. We also know that the data collected is not conclusively secure. You can set policies, and yet they still talk about retaining information as long as they deem necessary. When you go back and they talk about sharing the information, like the FBI might grab it, where's the FBI grabbing that information from if that data is purged? And the answer is, we know that the data is not secure. In fact, the ACLU has a lawsuit regarding the privacy of LPR. So, to the argument again, those of you out there who think this is really nothing to be worried about, well, then my question is, did you watch Terminator? Are you okay with being monitored every step of your life? And if the answer is yes, then I feel sorry for you, because as Americans, we should be able to move freely. The Fourth Amendment was made to ensure free movement all over in our lives without having to be constantly surveilled and harassed by the government.
Do you think Bob Norris has read these white papers? Do you think he understands the power of this technology and how they're saying it, not it might be used, it will be used? Do you think he understands it and is ignoring that? Or do you think he doesn't get it?
Well, part of me thinks that because of his experience with Los Angeles, that he is for big government. I mean, he frequently talks about that he is for responsible growth, and he intermixes it with, smart growth type of stuff. I don't know that he's really against. We've never heard him definitively answer what his position is on smart cities in the surveillance state. But if he doesn't understand this, then shame on him for allowing it to get to this point without asking the questions, without already putting a town hall together and saying, hey, folks, we're going to put on steroids what we previously had. We're going to put them on almost 40 vehicles, and they're going to be surveilling all the time whenever those units are driving. And we're all supposedly doing it so that we might find, that wanted vehicle. So we're going to risk everybody else's
He might
privacy.
find an incident of human trafficking, which
that
doesn't exist in
that would be
Kootenai
cool,
County.
right?
Yeah.
But, I was going to go and talk a little more. He makes some comments right after this, and we're not going to do it. We're going to end this.
All right.
But he was talking about the FOP. Some lady blasted him saying, hey, you sent out the Deputy Sheriff's Association. You allowed them to use the badge. And he claims, I didn't have anything to do with it. You did again, Bob. You already said it in your YouTube video. Different subject for a different time. Nick Franson comes in to also give testimony, and I'll just give a quick summary. He's talking again how it's important that once in a career time where you get behind a murder suspect, a highly violent individual, and you have to know that information right now. Well, here's the rub on that. How would you know it if you hadn't run the plate in the first place? If it's such imminent danger, my guess is you're probably somewhat, if you're putting your head on a swivel and doing what you're supposed to, like we've been doing on patrol for years and years and years, your argument is pretty weak. You're not running in Kootenai County every single day to some wanted felon that just whacked a bunch of people. But what you're saying is that your safety is of such priority as a deputy, and don't get me wrong, I want my deputies to go home safe, but you're taking out risk for yourself at the expense of the citizens who say we don't want this constant surveillance. It's easier for patrol to either be on the lookout visually for hot vehicles, whether they have wanted suspects in them or not, or whether they're stolen. Visually, we can be paying attention. And then lastly, run plates yourself. If you happen to find a plate that's comes back with a wanted suspect, you choose as the deputy, you choose the time and place that you engage and pull that vehicle over to investigate. Is the suspect truly in this vehicle? And the way that works is you get on the radio and you run that. And if dispatch advises, because they either saw you run it on your MDC or you ran it over the air, that this is a highly dangerous person, well, you're going to have other units coming your way. And you, as the primary investigating deputy, you get to choose time, place, location for the contact of that one person. So it's not as exigent as what they would make it seem. I've been there. I've done it. Now, sometimes it could be just like that. But that happens by people that aren't even wanted, that snap and jump out and do pretty bad things. It's a risk being a police officer. It's a risk being a deputy. That's why your training, the training that you should be doing all the time, helps mitigate some of that risk by the patrol procedures that you put into place to give yourself as the deputy a greater advantage tactically.
Yeah. But I think the other thing that you're up against is you have deputies who don't understand the data mining that's going on, or the gold mine that Kootenai County becomes of data that then is accessible to through all these other sources. It doesn't matter that your sheriff is going to say this, we're keeping this information safe. It's safe in our hands. Mm-hmm. He actually can't control that. Right. And I think you have deputies who are making sincere arguments for why they want to move forward with technology to make their job simpler or more efficient.
It's lack of leadership.
So I can pretty much guarantee that that's part of what's going on, and why they can make sincere appeals. They don't know.
Well, Motorola is putting out really cool videos. You know, they want the deputies to buy into it. And you know what? Hey, if it makes my job easier, cool.
That makes sense.
That's great. And I'm not saying that it's not beneficial, but the benefits don't outweigh the exposure, the liability, if you will, of being under constant surveillance. And I've said this before. We do not trade our dangerous liberty for a certain security. And I am a candidate for sheriff. I'm a law and order guy, as Bob likes to say. But I also know how to balance not only the work as a law enforcement officer, but also retaining the privacy, the protection of the people's rights that we ultimately serve. So I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. They're going to call me anti-law enforcement. I am definitely not anti-law enforcement. I am pro-responsibility for the citizens of the county that we serve. And yes, I will put myself out there and say, we can do other things. We don't need to spend that kind of money to have that kind of surveillance that can eventually be expanded to take away your individual liberty. So that's a recap of everything that went on last night. We wanted to jump out there and rebut what Bob Norris stated, give another view. You guys get to ultimately decide. You can find this information. We'll put it in the link down in YouTube. You'll probably have to put your email in for Motorola to let you download their documents, but it's there. You can see firsthand exactly what they do and don't do with that data. So as always, thanks for watching. God bless you all. Talk to you soon.
We'll put those links on the website as well when we put the video onto the website. Thank you for listening to this special edition of the Idaho Sheriff Broadcast with Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff. Remember, for the Idaho Sheriff Podcast, you can listen and subscribe wherever you get your shows, and website at theidahosheriff.com.
Liberty without compromise.